My sister tried to steal my lake house for the summer, listed it on Airbnb without permission, and called me abusive when I locked her out. She showed up with the whole family. So I called the cops, got her towed, and watched her meltdown go viral. Hey, Reddit. My family always treated my stuff like it was theirs. So I drew a line, built a life I was proud of, and walked away. But apparently, no wasn't in their vocabulary. Before we get into the chaos, let me start from the beginning. I'm Geraldine, 35, a senior market research analyst in Denver. After a decade of long hours, skipped vacations, and disciplined saving, I finally bought my dream lake house in northern Michigan, a small, two-bedroom place with a weathered dock and pine trees along the shore. It's my reward for years of hard work and proof that patience pays off. My parents live nearby and have always assumed they'd have free access to it. My younger sister, Ava, 29, calls herself an entrepreneur, which really means unemployed. She's spoiled, irresponsible, and endlessly praised by our parents while I'm reminded to check on her. I've bailed her out repeatedly. Rent, credit cards, emergencies that are really vacations, and she's never paid me back. Then, one random Tuesday afternoon, between two client calls, my phone buzzed with a text that looked like a joke. Ava, we're taking your lake house for the summer. I blinked. We're taking, not asking, not suggesting. Taking. I figured autocorrect had butchered something, but then I opened the family group chat. It was a circus. Mom responded with a flood of heart emojis. Dad wrote, "Perfect, family time is overdue." My aunt added, "I'll book flights this week." Everyone acted like I just volunteered my place for a free vacation. Then Ava shared a Google sheet. It wasn't a joke, it was a full itinerary. Room assignments, grocery lists, weekly activities, even a no pets rule that didn't exist. The master bedroom, my bedroom, was labeled ours. I typed a polite message. "Hey, I'm glad you're excited, but you need to ask before planning anything. I'll be using the lake house this summer." The responses came almost immediately. "Mom, family should share." "Geraldine, Dad, don't be difficult. It's just a house. Ava, you're hardly ever there anyway. We'll take better care of it." A few hours later, Ava posted a lake mood board to her Instagram story. Every photo, the dock, the fire pit, the living room was from my property. The caption read, "Our lakeside summer starts soon. Elner Family Goals." Then came a calendar invite titled, "Lake House Turnover Cleaning, June 29th. The description said, "Please make sure the property is clean before our arrival." It was sent from Ava's brand email. Apparently, I wasn't just the owner. I was now the janitor, too. I scrolled through the messages again. They weren't kidding. My cousin asked if he could bring his dog, the same one that chewed through my leather couch 2 Christmases ago. My aunt was organizing a 4th of July barbecue on my deck. Ava's boyfriend offered to help with maintenance, as if he was taking over property management. Not a single person had asked permission. They had decided collectively that because we share DNA, I was obligated to hand over the one thing I'd earned entirely by myself. This wasn't just entitlement, it was full-on delusion. I didn't bother replying again. Instead, I started screenshotting everything. The group chat, the spreadsheet, the Instagram story, even the cleaning schedule. If this ever needed to become evidence, I wanted a digital paper trail. That night, while the group continued planning our summer, I logged into my company's portal and submitted a PTO request for the end of June and the first week of July. It was approved within minutes. I leaned back in my chair. This wasn't about a lake house, it was about boundaries. And for 35 years, mine had been treated like suggestions. But this time was different. This wasn't just a casual favor or a few hundred. This was the one thing I'd worked relentlessly to earn, being treated like a community property. They were planning an entire summer vacation in a place they didn't own without so much as a question. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to explain why this was unacceptable. I'd spent too many years explaining things to people who had no interest in listening. Instead, I made a decision. I'd let them come, let them pack the cars, drag the coolers, and drive 6 hours north, let them pull into the gravel driveway with their towels and their big family plans. And when they reached the front door, they'd find it locked tight. They wanted me to be the villain. Fine, I'd play the part, but this time I'd be the one writing the ending. That night, I archived the chat and muted it. They could keep planning their fantasy summer. They had no idea I was planning something too. The season was going to be unforgettable, just not for the reasons they imagined. I didn't stumble into the lake house by accident. It was the result of a decade spent doing the work most people avoid, the kind that doesn't make headlines or Instagram posts. While others were planning destination weddings or building followings, I was building data models and living off black coffee. After college, I started as a junior analyst at a small consumer insights firm. Entry-level market research meant combing through endless survey data, segmenting demographics, and writing reports executives barely skimmed. But I was good at it, good enough to earn promotions faster than most. I took freelance contracts on the side, building survey panels for startups, and running product testing projects at night. Every extra dollar went into 2 spreadsheets I updated religiously: freedom for savings, and still breathing for everything else. Vacations? None. Weekends mostly spent staring at pivot tables. By 30, I was managing a team and signing 6-figure contracts. By 32, I had enough saved to start house hunting. At 33, the lake house was mine. Ava's career looked different. She'd tried at least 6 different business ideas, all of them fueled by parental handouts and my reluctant Venmo transfers. There was the online jewelry store that never got past the Etsy draft page, the wellness brand that launched with 2 Instagram posts and died in 3 weeks, the candle business she pitched at Christmas, which according to her failed because people don't understand luxury scents. Her emergencies were never emergencies. One time she called crying that her landlord was threatening eviction. I wired $12,200 that night, only to see photos of her at Coachella 2 days later. Another time she said she needed help covering medical bills. It turned out to be a $300 lash extension appointment and a weekend spa package. Our parents never saw a problem. When Ava got drunk and called in sick, Mom described it as a medical setback. When she posted selfies from a VIP table, Dad praised her networking skills. My promotions, a nod, maybe a text. Ava's half-baked projects, champagne in the kitchen, and speeches about her entrepreneurial spirit. I'd been tracking every dollar, $14,860 over the first 8 years, but in the last 2 years alone, I'd kicked in another $8,000. Her emergencies were getting more frequent and more expensive. The total was north of $22,000 now, and she'd never paid me back a cent. The lake house was supposed to be where all that stopped, a physical line between the person who always picked up the pieces and the woman who finally put herself first. But judging by the group chat, Ava didn't see it that way. I wasn't entirely alone in my corner of the lake. Down the road was Mr. Rohr, a retired Coast Guard officer with the temperament of a rulebook. He lived 3 doors down and noticed everything: license plates, noise levels, who left their trash bins out a day too early, the kind of neighbor you either hated or appreciated. I appreciated him. When he mentioned he was struggling to order groceries online, I set up his account for him and fixed his ancient Wi-Fi router. In return, he promised to keep an eye on things when I wasn't around. Then there was Doreen, the president of the Homeowners Association. She treated the neighborhood bylaws like sacred scripture. Lawn too long? Expect a warning. Wrong trash day, fine incoming. Most people found her unbearable. I didn't. In fact, I knew I'd be grateful for someone like her once Ava and company inevitably started treating the lake house like a resort. I'd spent years convincing myself that family was family, but the situation with the lake house wasn't nonsense. It was theft disguised as togetherness. They weren't planning a family getaway. They were planning a hostile takeover. And I was done acting like they had the right. The screenshots I'd saved from the group chat told the whole story. Ava assigning bedrooms like a cruise director. My aunt asking if the Wi-Fi was strong enough for her husband to work remotely. My cousin claiming one of the kayaks for daily sunrise workouts. The entitlement was so casual it almost looked rehearsed. I scrolled through the ledger again that night. $22,000, 10 years of excuses, 10 years of, I'll pay you back next month, 10 years of being the emergency fund, the chauffeur, the therapist, and the safety net. I wasn't their sister. I was a subscription service, family plus premium, unlimited bailouts, no refunds. But that plan was being canceled permanently. This time, the story wasn't going to follow the usual script, me sighing, giving in, and pretending it didn't bother me. This time, they were going to hit a wall, and not just a locked door, a firm, legal, well-documented, bulletproof wall. The next chapter of my life, and theirs, was about to start. And for once, I wasn't the one footing the bill. I left Denver before sunrise, the backseat loaded with tools, equipment, and enough caffeine to power a data center. The drive to northern Michigan was 23 hours of empty highways and too much time to think. Most people plan road trip playlists. I planned contingency checklists. By the time I hit the state line, I had a full mental blueprint. Cameras, locks, alarms, paperwork, every possible angle covered. They wanted to treat my lake house like a free resort. Fine. I was going to treat it like a fortress. When I pulled into the gravel driveway just after noon the next day, the place looked as peaceful as ever. The lake was glassy, the pines were still, and for a brief moment, I almost felt guilty. Then I remembered the group chat, the Instagram posts, and the cleaning schedule Ava sent me for my own property. Guilt evaporated. The next 3 days were all business. The first order of business was surveillance. I hired a local company to install motion-activated cameras covering every approach: the front door, back deck, driveway, and both sides of the house. Each feed streamed directly to my phone with instant alerts. Next came access control. I swapped every standard lock for smart locks, programmed exclusively to my phone and fingerprint. The old keys Ava and my parents still had were now useless metal. On every window and door, I installed sensors that would alert me if they were opened or tampered with. The security company recommended an alarm system loud enough to wake the next county. I agreed immediately. It connected directly to the local police dispatch if triggered. No phone call, no delay. I added layers they wouldn't even think about. Smart lighting that turned on and off randomly at night to make the house look occupied. Indoor noise sensors that would log any significant sound spikes, useful if I needed HOA evidence later. A small placard went in the front window. No key, no entry. All entry logged. Then I indulged in a bit of pettiness. I ordered a custom doormat that read, "Welcome to Paradise, by invitation only." It wasn't necessary, but it felt good. The paperwork came next. I scanned and backed up everything: deed, insurance, HOA bylaws, and the relevant Michigan trespass statutes, into a folder labeled Receipts. One copy lived on my laptop, another in the cloud, and a printed version went into a locked cabinet inside the house. Before I left, I typed and printed a dated letter addressed to whom it may concern and taped it to the inside of the front window. It stated in clear legal language that any unauthorized entry would be considered trespassing, and that the property was under video surveillance. It wasn't dramatic, it was documentation. Another breadcrumb for when this inevitably went too far. On my way out, I stopped by Mr. Rohr's porch. The retired Coast Guard officer was sipping coffee and sanding a piece of driftwood. I filled him in briefly, no drama, and asked him a favor. If you see anyone at the property who shouldn't be there or anything that looks off, would you mind giving me a call or the police if it's urgent? He didn't ask many questions, just nodded and handed me his number on a scrap of paper. I'm up early most days anyway. I'll keep an eye out. I believed him. Guys like Rohr don't make promises they won't keep. The house itself wasn't the only part of the plan. The moment I checked the mailbox, I found a business card wedged between bills. Atlantic Seaside Rentals. We turn homes into passive income. That was a red flag. I had no proof Ava was behind it, but the timing was too perfect. I sent the company a certified letter stating explicitly that I did not consent to any listings, subletting, or rental representation of my property. That was another piece of paper for the file. Then I made a few proactive calls. First, the local police department. I introduced myself, explained the situation briefly, and asked for the best non-emergency contact number. The officer on the line appreciated the heads up. If anyone shows up claiming they have a right to be there, we'll treat it seriously, he assured me. Next stop, the HOA's monthly coffee meetup. Doreen, the president, was delighted to see me. She spent 15 minutes talking about how strict they were about short-term rentals. I confirmed I didn't rent and mentioned I was concerned about unauthorized guests. She assured me the board would call the police if anyone showed up claiming to stay without my permission. Perfect. The final touch was programming the doorbell camera. Anytime it detected motion near the front door, it would autoplay a short message through the speaker. This property is under video surveillance. Unauthorized entry is prohibited. I tested it by walking up the steps. The message kicked in immediately, crisp and clear. Perfect. By the end of the third day, the house was locked down tighter than a bank vault. If they showed up uninvited, they'd face a mountain of evidence stacked against them. Before heading back to Denver, I walked through the house one last time. Everything looked perfect. Blinds drawn, sensors armed, camera lights blinking. I stepped onto the dock and stared out over the water, calm and still, knowing this peace wouldn't last long. Back in the driveway, I pulled out my phone and muted the family group chat. I didn't need to see their vacation plans anymore. The only notifications I left on were the motion alerts from the security system. If they came, I'd know. And when they did, they'd learn something my family had never been forced to learn before. By mid-June, the family's fantasy had fully metastasized. The group chat overflowed with packing lists, meal plans, and debates over whether they should repaint my dock. Ava posted a reel with the caption, "Officially summering at our lake house," using photos from her one and only visit. Then, on June 18th, a friend sent me a link to an Airbnb listing. Charming lakeside cottage sleeps 8. My address, my photos, my furniture. I didn't waste a second. I filed a fraud report with Airbnb, notified the HOA and local police, and added the screenshots to my evidence folder. 10 days later, June 28th, the Saturday before the 4th of July, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. 3 cars rolled into my driveway like a convoy. Mom and Dad's SUV, Ava's silver Jeep, and my aunt's minivan stuffed with kids, coolers, and inflatable swans. The camera feed showed folding chairs, grills, and suitcases. They weren't planning a weekend visit. They were planning a takeover. Ava strutted up to the front door in oversized sunglasses, pulling out the old key I'd given her years ago. She slid it into the lock and twisted. Nothing. She tried again, jiggling it harder. Still nothing. She stepped back, sighed loudly, and muttered, "She must have changed it wrong," as if I'd forgotten how locks work. Then she pulled out her phone and made a call. Within 15 minutes, a white van rolled up, a locksmith she'd clearly arranged ahead of time. Before he could touch the door, I tapped the doorbell speaker. "This is the property owner. Do not touch those locks." The locksmith froze mid-motion, stood up, and walked back to his van. "Yeah, I'm not touching that," he muttered before driving off. Ava shouted at the disappearing van in frustration. That's when the real desperation kicked in. Ava circled the house, peering through windows and jiggling sliders. Kyle, her boyfriend, tried prying open the shed door. My phone lit up with one motion alert after another. I typed a short message into the family group chat. "You are trespassing. This property is under video surveillance. Michigan Penal Code 750.552 applies. Timestamp 1422. Minutes later, Mr. Rohr walked past with his dog, glancing at the chaos and then up at the cameras. He gave a short nod before continuing on. It was reassuring to know there was a witness. Then I received an alert from my utility company. Someone had reported a fake power outage to get access. I called immediately, locked my account with a passcode, and the reppy flagged it as fraud. About 30 minutes later, I received an email from Doreen at the HOA. There had been a noise complaint about loud music, illegally parked vehicles, and suspicious activity. She had already visited the property. According to her, Ava claimed they were the owners. When Doreen asked for proof, Ava had none. A formal warning was issued and CC'd to me. I decided that was enough. I called the local police non-emergency line, calmly explained the situation, and requested an officer be dispatched. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officers Martinez and Hoy stepped out and were immediately met with a performance. Mom crying, Dad trying to look reasonable, Ava shouting about family rights. They claimed it was a misunderstanding. The officers called me, and I emailed them the property deed, screenshots, and a signed electronic trespass affidavit. When the officers told them they had to leave, Ava completely lost it. She screamed that this was abuse, that the house was community property, that they had a right to be there. Officer Hui asked to see her phone, which she had left unlocked, and there it was, the fake Airbnb listing still active. Next to it was a spreadsheet titled Room Assignments with my master bedroom labeled as ours. The officers made it clear if they didn't leave immediately, they could face criminal trespass charges. Dad, sweating and humiliated, tried to negotiate, suggesting they just stay for the weekend. The officers didn't budge. Within 15 minutes, they were loading their things back into the cars, grumbling about coming back with a lawyer. Then karma decided to pile on. Less than an hour after they left, Mr. Rohr texted me. Police had set up a routine summer safety checkpoint down the road. Ava's Jeep got pulled over. Expired registration. She went on Instagram Live from the side of the road, mascara running, claiming I had called ahead to have her pulled over, as if I had the cops on speed dial and could arrange a checkpoint on a public highway. The comments were split between, OMG, that's abuse, and, girl, you just forgot to renew your tags. I couldn't help but laugh. The universe didn't need my help. It had a subscription service of its own. The silence didn't last long. Within 24 hours of being escorted off my property, Ava was back online. Except this time, the performance had a new stage. Her Instagram stories turned into a rant series, each one more dramatic than the last. I was now greedy, emotionally abusive, and brainwashed by money. She posted a slideshow of photos of my lake house, claiming I'd locked my own family out of their vacation home. Her followers, who mostly consisted of friends who still lived with their parents, ate it up. She doubled down with a caption that read, "Some people let money change them. Some people forget family matters more than property." She conveniently left out the part where she tried to break into said property and listed it on Airbnb. The comments poured in, people calling me selfish, cold, controlling. I didn't respond. Screenshots were enough. The smear campaign didn't stop there. A few days later, my manager forwarded me an email from someone with my mom's name. It was addressed directly to the company. In it, she suggested I might be struggling with anger issues and unresolved family trauma that could affect my workplace behavior. My boss's message above the forwarded email was simple. Thought you should see this. I'm not concerned, but HR flagged it. I wrote back immediately, calm and concise. I explained the situation, the attempted trespassing, the police involvement, the false claims online, and attached the documentation, police report number, screenshots of Ava's posts, the fraudulent Airbnb listing, and the trespass affidavit. I ended with a request that any further communication from my family be routed to HR directly. My boss replied less than an hour later. Understood. You're fine. Honestly, impressive documentation. That was the last time my family's attempts to sabotage my career even registered. They had tried to make me look unstable. Instead, they'd handed me another opportunity to show how controlled and prepared I was. Next, I decided to draw a legal line in the sand. I downloaded a cease and desist template and sent 2 letters. The first went to Ava. Stop the defamatory posts, remove my property images, cease the fraud attempts. The second went to my mother. Do not contact my employer again under any circumstances, or future incidents will be treated as harassment and referred to legal counsel. Both were sent certified mail. Both were delivered within 3 days. Neither responded. Meanwhile, Doreen from the HOA turned out to be more useful than I expected. She filed a noise violation for the driveway music incident and an official note about attempted unauthorized occupancy. In her report, she included that Ava had falsely claimed ownership and refused to leave when asked. It wasn't just neighborhood gossip anymore. It was a documented pattern of behavior. Even the community itself seemed to take my side. One afternoon, I received a handwritten note in the mail. It was from Mr. Rohr. Saw the whole thing. It read in block letters. Sorry you're going through this. You're in the right. Don't let them bully you. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Having an impartial witness who'd seen their behavior firsthand would help if things escalated further. But Ava wasn't done playing the victim. On Facebook, she wrote a post accusing me of weaponizing the legal system against my own blood. She claimed the police had humiliated them on their property. My aunt commented that I had forgotten where I came from. Distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years started chiming in with their opinions. One even messaged me privately to say I was overreacting and should let family use the place once in a while. I didn't respond to any of them. Every word they posted went straight into a growing evidence folder titled Family Defamation Attempts. In the family group chat, things got worse. Ava's messages shifted from angry to unhinged. One read, "We're talking to a lawyer. We're going to get legal access to our lake house." Another said, "This isn't over. We have rights." I couldn't help but laugh when I read that one. "I'd love to see the deed with your name spelled imaginary," I muttered to myself. They could threaten all they wanted. The law was on my side. The documentation was airtight, and their every public misstep was another piece of evidence in my favor. The smear campaign wasn't about winning. It was pressure, guilt, drama, manipulation, the family's usual playbook. But not this time. I stayed quiet. I stayed steady. And every angry post, every baseless threat, every attempt to drag my name through the mud just made my case stronger. The fallout wasn't hurting me. It was burying them. They had gone from family bonding trip to police warnings, fraud reports, HOA violations, and defamation letters in less than a month. And while they were busy spinning their narrative online, I was busy building an unshakable wall of evidence, one that would make sure their next attempt at overstepping ended even faster than the first. They'd wanted to make this about family. I was making it about facts. And facts, unlike feelings, hold up in court. Life returned to normal after the chaos, and for the first time in months, normal actually felt good. Back in Denver, I slipped into a routine I hadn't realized I missed. Mornings started with the gym instead of angry texts. Evenings were focused on client projects instead of family drama. Weekends were split between hiking trips and quiet solo drives to the lake house, where I could finally enjoy the silence I'd worked so hard to protect. I kept the family group chat muted, but I still checked it every now and then, not out of curiosity, but to document anything stupid. The posts were still coming. Cryptic quotes about greed, subtweets about betrayal, and the occasional conspiracy theory that I had stolen the house. All of it went into the receipts folder. Then the next move came, and it was uglier than before. One Tuesday morning, I got an alert from my electric company. Someone had tried to add a second account at my lake house address under a slightly misspelled version of my name. The rep said they'd been given my birth date, which Ava knew, and claimed they were moving into the guest house. I shut it down immediately, added a passcode to the account, and filed a fraud report. The company flagged the attempt and sent me a formal notice. I saved it under Exhibit Utility Scam. 2 days later, I got a text from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, there was a misunderstanding with some paperwork about the house. Sorry if that caused issues." I archived it without responding. A week later, a guy called claiming Ava had hired him off Craigslist to power wash the deck, said she'd sent him $300 via Venmo as a deposit and promised the rest when he showed up. "I'm outside the property now," he said, "but the door's locked and she's not answering." I told him flat out, "I'm the owner. No one hired you. If you step on that property, you're trespassing." He went quiet for a second, then muttered, "Yeah, I figured this smelled off." He hung up. I checked my cameras. Sure enough, a beat-up pickup truck was idling in the driveway. He left 2 minutes later. I never found out if Ava actually sent him money or if he was in on it. Either way, I sent him a screenshot of the property deed with a warning. He didn't come back. Their next attempt was more brazen. One Saturday evening, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the property. Ava's Jeep was parked illegally at the public access point down the road. The camera feed showed her dragging a cooler and portable speaker across the grass toward the property line. My noise sensor started pinging within the hour. Music, shouting, laughter. She wasn't breaking into the house this time. She was throwing a party at the public access point next door. I made one call to the HOA and another to the county sheriff's lake patrol. Within 40 minutes, officers were on site. They issued citations for noise violations, trespassing on private property, and illegal parking. Later that night, Mr. Rohr texted me again. Ava had driven to the public boat launch and tried to back a borrowed trailer into the water without a permit, blocking the entire ramp. Harbor Patrol towed her Jeep within 20 minutes. Online, she spun the story differently. "She's targeting me," she wrote. She called the cops on her own family. The following weekend, they tried again, this time with fireworks. I was watching the camera feeds when Mr. Rohr texted me. "They're setting up rockets by the shore." Fireworks were heavily restricted near the lake, and Rohr didn't hesitate to call it in. Police showed up before they could light a single fuse. The fireworks were confiscated, and fines were issued on the spot. Meanwhile, the Airbnb sting finally paid off. I received a confirmation email from the company. The fraudulent listing had been removed, the host account flagged, and a warning issued. They thanked me for preventing a potential illegal booking. I downloaded the email as a PDF and saved it under a new evidence label. Exhibit Fantasy Property Manager. After that, the family's energy started to fade. The threats in the group chat slowed down, replaced by complaints and vague attempts at guilt. My parents, who had once defended Ava's every move, seemed to be running out of excuses. My mom eventually emailed me. No emotional blackmail, no dramatic language, just, "Can we speak?" I replied with a single sentence. "I will only communicate in writing and only about logistics, not feelings." She didn't respond for a week. When she finally did, it was just to say, "Understood." Each failed attempt was another brick in the wall: the utility fraud, the fake contractor job, the illegal party, the fireworks, the towing. Each move showed just how far they were willing to go and how much further I was prepared to push back. By mid-August, the storm had passed. I drove up to the lake house for the first time since the chaos began. The air was crisp, the water still, the cameras blinked steadily from their mounts, and the locks hummed when I opened the door. Nothing was out of place. I spent the weekend exactly how I'd imagined when I bought the place: kayaking at sunrise, reading on the deck, grilling dinner as the sun went down. There was no shouting, no entitlement, no drama, just peace. Before leaving, I checked the camera feed one last time from the dock. The property looked exactly as it should: untouched, secure, and completely mine. I stared straight into one of the cameras and smirked. "Still mine," I said quietly. They had tried to take over my life, my property, and my peace. And one by one, I'd taken everything back, without raising my voice, without losing control, and without compromising. They had burned every bridge they built, and I'd watched every single one collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. This wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet, calculated, and complete. And it felt better than anything I'd ever done. It took almost 2 months of silence before Ava resurfaced. The first message came late on a Tuesday night, long after I'd stopped expecting anything from her. "I need help. Kyle left. I'm behind on rent. I just need a place to stay for a little while, please." She went on for several paragraphs: how she was trying to start over, how her mental health had suffered, how being close to the lake would help her reset. She even offered to help manage bookings for the property to pay me back. I stared at the screen and shook my head. The only thing getting managed was the distance between us. 2 days later, the pressure campaign began. Mom called, her tone rehearsed and calm, asking me to be the bigger person. Dad sent a text reminding me that family takes care of each other. They all said the same thing: forget the past, focus on healing. I responded with one message: no. Attached was a single PDF, 30 pages of everything they had done since the first text: the trespass affidavit, screenshots of the fake Airbnb listing, the HOA violations, the attempted utility scam, the email to my boss, the towing report, the fireworks citation, and the cease and desist letters. At the bottom of the final page was one line: "When there is sustained accountability, we can revisit. Until then, my answer is no." It didn't go over well. Ava switched tactics within hours. The messages swung from desperation to rage. "You ruined my life. You won." "Okay. Is that what you wanted? I'll sign an apology letter if you let me stay." I ignored them all. Apologies tied to perks aren't apologies. They're negotiations. And I was done negotiating. A week later, my parents asked to meet. They promised Ava wouldn't be there. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only under strict conditions. Neutral ground. Public place. 1 hour. We met at a diner in Omaha, halfway between Denver and Grand Rapids. They looked older than I remembered. The stress was finally showing on their faces. Mom tried to open with small talk. I cut straight to business. "I'm not here to rehash everything," I said. "I'm here to set terms." They listened quietly as I laid them out like a contract. No more loans, not 1 cent. The lake house is by invitation only. If I say no, it's no. You do not contact my employer, ever. And if Ava wants to fix this, she starts by going to therapy, deleting every false post, and putting in writing what she did. There's no timeline. I make no promises. They exchanged a look. For once, there was no arguing, no deflection, no guilt trips. Just two exhausted people who finally seemed to understand the damage they'd allowed. Okay, Dad said. We'll talk to her. Mom nodded. We just don't want to lose you. I didn't say what I was thinking, that they should have worried about that before letting Ava run wild for 30 years. But I let it sit. I'm not lost, I said finally. I just stopped playing along. They hugged me in the parking lot. Awkward, but at least it was something. A few weeks later, Ava tried again. Please, just the weekend. I won't cause problems. I promise. I'm sorry for everything. The words were simple this time. No bargaining, no conditions, just 2 sentences. I read them more than once, but didn't reply. I set the phone down and walked out onto the deck of the lake house. It was early morning, the kind of crisp, pale sunrise that makes the water look like glass. Down the shore, a family I didn't know was setting up beach chairs and a picnic blanket, their laughter carrying across the water. I opened the messages again, typed 2 words, not now, and saved them as a draft. Then I pocketed my phone and walked to the dock. The kayak slid into the water with barely a ripple. The wind was light, the lake perfectly still. As I paddled toward the open water, I glanced back at the house. The cameras blinked steadily in the morning light. The locks were unchanged. The property was untouched. This was what victory looked like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't about police sirens or legal threats. Revenge was waking up in a place I had earned and built for myself. It was knowing I could say no and mean it. It was peace, the kind that couldn't be taken, borrowed, or guilt-tripped away. They had spent years treating me like a safety net, a resource, a guaranteed yes. They had learned, slowly and painfully, that those days were over. And maybe someday, if the apologies are real and the behavior changes, I'll consider letting them back into my life. But that choice will be mine, not theirs. The rest of it, the drama, the guilt, the manipulation, was just noise. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't hear a thing.